Well, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you happen to be joining us from. We're glad that you came along, and whether you're watching us live or after the event, we appreciate your being here. Tonight, we have a special guest, Rob VE3PCP, and Rob is going to talk to us. He's got a couple of interesting things that he's involved with. Primarily, I want to talk to him about remote HF operation. But he's also got his fingers in something known as NOBLE Skywave, which I think is a really interesting topic. So we'll get into all that. Would really love to see comments from you folks as you're watching and following along. Please put them into the chat, and we'll respond to those as we can. But first things first, you know what? We're a week away from Christmas. We have a resident pastor, and that would be Chris, Kilo 2 Charlie Juliet Bravo. He is an actual pastor of an actual church. It's right. His full-time gig. And I've asked Chris if he wouldn't mind sharing with us a little bit of a Christmas message to kick things off. Chris, over to you.
All right. Well, I can certainly do that. I mean, it's funny, you give a pastor a microphone, and it could be that could be an hour. So actually, what I was going to do is just to quickly talk about. Most people have seen the famous Schultz, the classic Charlie Brown Christmas cartoon special that's on every year, and there's an interesting story behind that. Schultz actually had a fight with CBS to keep one particular scene in the show, and that's the scene where Charlie Brown is very upset, and he's trying. Can anybody explain to me what Christmas is all about? And then Linus, with his blanket, walks up, says, I can explain what Christmas is all about. And he quotes a passage of scripture out of Luke chapter 2. So that's the scene that couple of seconds, maybe a minute, 2 minutes, that Schultz had a fight with CBS way back in the early 60s to keep that in. So, but anyway, what I thought I would do is just kind of, I'm going to read that passage, and then there's a hymn that I think kind of connects to it, and we'll just do a quick thing on that, and then I'll go out. So the passage is this, out of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. It says, and there were shepherds in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Suddenly, a great company of the heavenly host appeared to the angel, praising God and saying, glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. It's a great passage. And I often, one time, I preached on it a couple of times, and you often wonder what that must have looked like. Here's these shepherds. Shepherds were not, a lot of people think like the cute little kid in a shepherd costume in the Christmas pageant, right? They were actually considered very untrustworthy. They were treated like common criminals, believe it or not. But here it is, this angel appears to them, and that makes this great announcement. So now think of the great carol, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. Now, of course, the word hark, we don't really use that much anymore, but it really means like listen or hear.
So I use hark all the time.
Do you really?
Yeah. Woman, hark.
Yeah. No, that's when you're talking to a dog, you're using that word, right? So anyway, so the hymn goes, hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn king, peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. So just that first line really is the whole message of Christmas when you think about it. The angels came, they announced that the Messiah was, but that word Messiah is used in there, Messiah being an Old Testament term meaning Savior, the one that God would send to save mankind. And it says peace in the scripture passage says, peace to those on whom his favor rests. And here it says peace on earth. Well, peace that we know, look around the world today, there's no peace in the world. I mean, there's never really been worldwide peace. We know that. So really the peace it talks about is being reconciled with God. And how are we reconciled with God? Well, that is through Christ and what he did. Now, the funny thing is, like, we think of him as this innocent little infant this time of year, but really the reconciliation happened when he went to the cross, because when he died on the cross, he died in our place and bore the wrath of God for us. So God and sinners reconciled. That's what the hymn says. And that's really what happens at the end of Jesus' physical life. It was at the end of his life, before he was resurrected, obviously. But by him going to the cross, his sacrifice is what reconciles us to God. So we celebrate it in Christmas because he's here. This is the promised Messiah that God had promised was born, and it's celebrated. It was announced by angels in the sky above Bethlehem, and that there were these lowly shepherds heard them. So the message for us is that really is the message, the reason for the season. It's such a overused phrase, but the reason for the season truly is Christ. That's why his name is in the name Christmas. It's not some other thing. It's Christmas, and that's what it celebrates. It celebrates Christ. So there you have it. Keep that in mind. That's right.
Thank you, Chris. That's fantastic. I appreciate that. It gives us all a moment of grounding before we move on, and let's just do a quick around the table here. What have we been up to over the past month since our last stream? Chris, do you want to kick us off and let us know a little bit about what you've been into?
Sure. And actually, what I can do, it ties to what I was just talking about. Yours truly has published a book.
No kidding.
And it is on lyrics of the Advent. So the kind of thing I just kind of spoke
about. All right,
about.
look, I can't deal with this, okay? He's a pastor, he's an author, he's a musician, he's a broadcast engineer. I can't keep up, man.
We are not worthy.
Yeah. He needs to graduate, like, already.
This is that jack of all trades,
you're
master
running
of
the curve, dude. There's a curve here, okay?
So anyway, this is available on Amazon, so feel free. Get a hold of one of those. It goes through all the hymns and all that stuff. Okay,
that's awesome.
Watch it go to number one.
Fantastic. That's fantastic, Chris. Unbelievable.
But ham radio wise, I worked the 10-meter contest last weekend. Not to be in the contest, right. But I worked a few new countries on 10 meters. And believe it or not, and two of our guests tonight are going to be stunned when they hear this. I've been in ham radio close to 50 years. All right. And on 10 meters, I do not have a contact with Canada logged. Believe it or not.
Really?
Yep, but I do now. So anyway, there you go. That's what I did this past week. I was on 10-meter contest, worked a few new countries on 10 meters.
But do you have a VY0?
That was helpful. I'm glad the little words were helpful.
Good stuff. Hey, Tim, okay, what is new in the world of Aetherwave antennas?
Nothing, man. Just Christmas. Christmas all day, all night. Christmas and FedEx. Going back and forth to FedEx.
Shipping out hunks of wire, I'm guessing.
Yes. Which is good. I like that.
Oh yeah. No. So are people buying gifts for themselves then? Like, what do you see at Christmas time? Do you see a bit of a slump as people focus on other things?
It's pretty strange because normally December is a very slow time, and I imagine people are buying like radios and the big stuff right when they for Christmas and whatnot. But this year's been pretty busy. I imagine honey, I would like a QRP or low power off center fed dipole for 40 through 6 meters. Please, you get that on your list, right? So you're just going to go out and I can get that, right? No, people buy for themselves, or people give them money. Here, go buy something, and there it is. Unless you're buying for another ham, then that's different.
Yep. Everything else cool?
I got a blizzard here now. For the love of God.
Jeez. Well,
yeah.
Now you had an antenna repair to do, did you?
Yeah. April. Let's try that.
We'll call that a long-term project.
That's okay. I've got 3 of them up and around, so I'll get by.
All right. Yeah, you got a backup plan.
It was the big one. Remember years back when we built I built 2 of the big 80-meter OCFs with the twin toroids. I think you got one and I got the other.
Yep.
That's the one that came. Well, the antenna itself didn't come down. I mean, the element did, but it was the slick line that broke and the weight bag.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's okay. I actually last week we had a big wind whip through here, and I'm sitting here as I normally do, working during the day. First thing in the morning, the ONTARS net, which is the local 80-meter Ontario region net, is going on, and a friend of mine, VE3 ROR in Hamilton, Rob, he's net control, and I go back to him, and all of a sudden I'm hitting and I'm saying hi to Rob, and all of a sudden I notice I'm getting the high SWR reading on my FT710, and it's like, whoa, Rob, I got to get back to you. I got to find out what the heck's going on. So I walk out back, and sure enough, my antenna, which is suspended between multiple trees, the radiator, it's a high-end Fed, definitely not an N9 SAB, radiator literally snapped in the middle, end Fed 80 meter resonant antenna. So I reached out to my pal Tim, and he and I are going to figure out what I can do to replace it. I think
now that the first place.
Now that the post office is back to work, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I'm sort of wondering though. You know what? For the longest time, I've kind of pushed back on going with an 80 meter off center Fed. I might do that this time, even though it involves a wire going over my exposed front yard to a 12-foot sapling that the city planted a number of years ago, rubber tree, if you can believe it, because they were cheap. Stupid city. My taxes didn't go down, but so I'm sort of thinking, well, maybe I'll use that antenna. So we'll talk about that further as we get going.
Okay.
All right. So there you go, Rob. We're going to get to everything that you're involved in, but tell us a little bit about the past few weeks for you. Maybe give us a high-level overview, and then we'll start digging into what you've brought us.
Well, thanks, Tracy, and good evening to everyone out there. This past weekend, we did a full-day operation to celebrate the 123rd anniversary of Marconi receiving the first transatlantic radio signal at Signal Hill, Newfoundland on December 12, 1901, and great looking pocket protector there, Tim. And the only thing you're missing is a Sharpie. Anyway, so we had, there goes to get one.
I got one.
We had, so we had guest operators on with us. We operated FT8 on Friday night from 0000 UTC for about 3 hours, and we use AnyDesk for doing that. We don't use remote hams for that portion of it. So I'm not sure whether anybody's familiar with AnyDesk, but it's a remote software where you can access your computer remotely. So that's how we did FT8, and then Saturday we operated for 8 hours in 2 4-hour blocks, and so I had Tuğçe from Turkey, Tango Alpha 3, Tango Golf Charlie, and she was under the weather, so she couldn't really talk. So she did FT8 on 30 meters. And then we had Emmy, Lima Whiskey 6 Echo Golf Echo from Argentina on with us. And Matthew, OM8 ATE from Slovak Republic, and he operated with us as well. So we did 12 bands in total, an hour. 10 of those bands we did an hour on each band. So it was 160 through 10 meters, including 60 meters. And then after we were done with that, then I jumped over to my UHF remote, and between my son and I, we got a contact on each one of those bands. We were operating as Victor Alpha 3 X-Ray X-Ray Tango. So the last hour on HF, we did some 10 meter contesting. So I think we had 150 odd contacts overall for the day, but it really wasn't. We don't really go for massive numbers of contacts. We like to spend time talking to each one of the contacts, telling them what the reason for the special event operation was, and letting them understand, the remote operators, where they're from and what their own call sign is and so forth. And of course we live streamed the operation, even the FT8 portion. The FT8 portion, you wouldn't hear much except maybe some FT8 noise, but you could watch the screen and see where the contacts were, and so those are all available on my YouTube channel. So that was just this past weekend. So that's a little bit more operating than we normally do, but that's what we did this past weekend.
Lots on the go there. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I'm saying I'm keeping my
okay. All right. So lots on the go, Rob. Now I'd like to just let's just tell folks, give us a little bit of an idea about yourself, who you are, how you got into ham radio, how long you've you've been into the hobby, and give us a little bit of a benchmark as we move into. And by the way, thank you very much for agreeing to come on with us. It's a great pleasure for us to have you here. But let me just set the table a little bit more. So Rob has been attending our live streams for a number of months now. Thank you for that support, Rob. But the more I learned about the sorts of things that he's into, the more I realized, you know what, this is actually a really interesting topic for one of our streams. You're doing some really fascinating stuff, Rob. So just before we get into the remote HF operation, and then hopefully some time for the Noble Skywave after that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm 67 years old, and I got my basic qualification in 1985, and my advanced in 1986, the year after. But I've been involved in ham radio and CB for many, many years before that. My father, my late father, he got into it in the 60s. So myself and I had two twin brothers that were 3 years older than me. One passed away in 2020, but the one that's still around, he's also a ham. So we used to go out and attend field day with Dad and the club that was in Goderich, Ontario at that time, and we really enjoyed that. So, we'd watch Dad being immersed in solder smoke, building all his Heathkit radios and equipment and so forth, and it certainly sparked the interest. And time went on, and I got married and had some kids, and then I decided to go ahead and get my license. So, and with moving around and life happens, I dropped out of it for a while, but then got back into it probably about 10 years ago, and certainly have been involved with it pretty intensely since then.
Good stuff. Okay, thank you. Rob, just to let everybody know out there, you have your YouTube channel, and I would encourage everybody watching this to go over and subscribe to Rob's channel. He puts some interesting stuff up that pertains to the types of activities that he's involved in. So go on over to Rob Noakes VE3PCP. Okay, now the reason you're here with us, of course, is the primary reason, the thing that I was fascinated by, and I know there are others too, is this whole concept. We've seen this sort of creeping into the hobby in recent years. The whole concept of operating your HF station remotely. Now, first things first, Rob, could you define what that is for us?
Well, essentially, your HF radio is connected to your computer, and the computer has some sort of server residing on it, depending on what sort of program you're using for remote operation. I use remote hams, and I'll get into why I use them a little bit later on. But so essentially, what that does, it allows you to connect to that server remotely over the internet, whether it's a companion type of software on a laptop or a computer somewhere, or on your cell phone. I can connect with my Android phone with the RC4 client software on the phone, and basically you can connect from anywhere that you can get an internet connection.
Okay, now that we know what it is, why would somebody want to do this?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Maybe you live in an apartment and you have no way of putting up antennas or have the ability to have a station in your apartment. So, you may have access to a property at somebody's place that's outside of town, maybe in a quiet area. So you've got some place you can put up a nice antenna system where it's quiet, and then you can operate from your apartment or your condo. More closer to home for me personally, in the last few years of my father's life, he moved into a retirement home or assisted living home, I guess is the correct term for it. And at that time, the remote operations were not really a thing yet. This was back in the in the 2000s, so it really wasn't developed to the point it's at now. And he was an avid user on the radio. He's on OnTARS and the Chicken Junction Net and Ontario Phone Net every day, and it really bothered him that he had to give all that up when he moved into the retirement home. And we tried putting an antenna up, and we got told to get it down straight away. So had we been able to set up a remote station then he could have still carried on. And as it happens, the first radio that I used to set up with actually was his radio, the Kenwood TS850. So I kind of made the commitment at that point in time that I would offer, to anyone in his similar situation, the opportunity to use my radio if they so choose to do so. So now there are quite a number of people that are using it. I've got two people that use it full TX and RX for doing their hours on OnTARS. And Barry V3ISX, the OnTARS manager, he uses it for receive because he's got such a high noise level in where he lives in Hamilton. So he can use my remote receiver, and then he has a switching system on his computer that he can mute my audio when he transmits. And Paul VA3 Papa Bravo, he also uses it that way as well. So if you're ever checking into OnTARS, Victor Echo 3 Charlie Echo Alpha Chris uses it. Paul V3 AXT uses it. And there's another older gentleman, V3 Charlie Delta, that he moved into a retirement home. He was doing an hour on Sunday mornings with it, but he's been having a lot of issues, and he kind of had to drop out of it. But so that's kind of how it all started, but it's grown quite a bit since then into much bigger and broader usage.
It's a great idea, that way so people that live in those sorts of situations where they just can't get a shack set up, if they've got access, get online, that really is a great way to just give them an opportunity to operate HF when they may not be able to.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And I see Wade VA3 NCA made a comment about you need to hold an advanced certificate to operate a remote station. That is true if you want to operate it on your own. However, if there's a part of the regulations called participation in communication. So some of you may not recall, maybe you haven't been in long enough to remember when phone patches were a big thing. So the person that was owner of the station was in the station. You'd connect to your phone, and it was set up usually with Vox, and so anybody that was on the phone could talk through your station. Well, the participation and communication part of the regulation still allows for that. So as long as I'm in the station, I can have anybody that wants to come in and connect remotely, and I still have full control of the station. And so we have several groups that we operate with, and there's all kinds of live stream videos on my YouTube channel. But the biggest group is the International YL and Youth Remote Group. That's Victor Alpha 3 Yankee Lima Radio. And we have a very large number of YLs and youth that are involved in that. And, so we can have 4 or 5 people on at the same time. And that gets into why I use remote hams, because remote hams allows us to do that. Whereas a lot of the other, linking softwares do not allow more than one user at a time. Flex Radio, you can't have any more. I think you can have 2, but you can't have any more than that. Remote ham radio, which is also a flex-based thing. That's I think it's only one user at a time. Remote TX. So there's a lot of other solutions, but remote hams is about the only one that allows or supports having multiple consecutive users. And that's a great way to train people. So if you got some newly licensed amateurs that don't have their own HF station, then I can invite them to join me, and I can mentor them and coach them through give them the opportunity to operate and learn from, somebody that's got a lot of years of experience, the do's and the don'ts, and how to operate in a contest, or how to just have a regular QSO. So it has a lot of advantages. So that's why we use remote hams.
So you've mentioned a few different topologies, I guess, for making this all happen. So here's a comment from Terry Poda Babe. Hey Terry, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Terry is a friend. She's been on our show before. My partner Glenn W4YES is operating remotely because we live in a townhouse. He is using RRC boxes, which are not easy to set up. Do you know what that looks like? What an RRC box is?
No, I don't. But I did interface with the Poda Babe and her partner there on emails back and forth, and we talked a bit about their desire is to operate CW with a keyer or a bug, or paddles, and you can do that with remote hams. I've got several people that do that. Actually, I have one guy that's from Quebec, Pierre, VE2 Papa India Delta. He operates quite regularly, only CW only, using paddles. So he uses a USB to RS-232 cable into his computer, and then the remote hams client allows you to connect through that. It has a local side tone for CW, so the latency doesn't cause any issues. And then this, for the month of December, there's a young fella from France, Jules, Foxtrot 4 India Echo Yankee, that I tested last summer, and he got his basic with honors, and then he took the advanced test while he was at the Yoda camp in Halifax last summer. So he's operating through my station for Victor Charlie 3 Yoda for the month of December, and he's operating CW only. So that's why. Again, another reason why I use remote hams, because it makes CW really easy. And so you can either use paddles, or you can use the built-in keyboard function, which also includes macros. So you can set up so for contesting, it works really well. You can set up macros to send CW, or send your call sign, or your report, or any of those types of things. And so it makes it really quite simple to contest. There's a lot of people are using computer-generated code for contests, so I don't feel the least bit bad about doing it.
Is the choice of a rig a fairly critical choice, or is it pretty much you've got a broad range of radios that you can choose from if you want to get into remote operation?
Each software sort of has its niche. ICOM has their, I think it's a Win for ICOM suite that you can use. Flex has their own sort of way of connecting. There are different solutions that are very brand specific. Remote hams has drivers for many different types of radios. It originated with Elecraft, but then it got more people involved, and more people wrote software that would allow it to connect to different radios. So the TS850 is an older radio. It's probably 30 years old now, and it was one of the first Kenwood radios that allowed connecting it to a computer. So it did not give me all the functionality through remote hams that the Kenwood TS870 that I use now does, but it still allowed me to operate. So I wasn't able to use the antenna tuner, which kind of sucked, but it just made me get better at tuning my antennas and making sure that they were all resonant. And then I could limit the frequencies of operation to stay within that 2-to-1 bandwidth sort of thing on each band. Whereas the 870 is a little newer rig, and I've got more functionality in it. So I've got it connected to two different antennas. It's got two antenna ports. Antenna 1 is connected to a 9-band ground mount vertical in my backyard. Does 10 through 160. 80 meters is pretty narrow. So for that, I have on antenna 2, I have a 8040 fan dipole that's set up NVIS, and that's on antenna 2. So, and the radio's got enough intelligence in it, even though it's 25 years old, that it remembers which antenna that you're using for each band. So as soon as you switch bands, then it goes over to the correct antenna and auto tunes. So it's pretty flawless, and it just works.
Do you? Sorry. So back to the radio and the software interface here. As somebody's using remotely, do they have a lot of the functionality of the radio they're using? Can they switch antennas, for example? Do they have access to the various filtering? Like, how does that all work?
Yes. So the owner of the station can select within the server software what buttons are available for use. And typically, I know the ICOM 7300 and 7610 have a plethora of buttons that the average operator just is never going to use. So you can disable those or hide them so they don't come up in the interface. But if you look at the videos on my YouTube channel, the live stream videos, you'll see the actual remote hams GUI, and you can see all the different buttons that are using, and those are all available to the remote operators. So you've got you can type in the numbers in the number panel what frequency you want. You can change your mode. You can change the what the meter's showing you, whether it's SWR or power, ALC, compression ratio. There's I also have audio filters, so there's low and high audio filters. So I always keep it set from 0 to 3,000 hertz for audio, so it's full beautiful Kenwood audio all the time. Or if there's a station nearby, I can narrow the audio frequency up to reject it a bit. It's got auto notch in it, AIP, which is a Kenwood thing, auto tune, manual tune. So if you're tuning up a amplifier, then you can push the M tune, and it's the same as keying it. And you can set your CW speed. You can turn your power up and down. So there's a lot of functionality there. Everything that you would need to make adjustments while you're on the air.
So this is the screen that the operator would see, Rob? That
is an FT8 screen. So you're looking at WSJTX.
Yep.
Then the band scope down below it. Over on the right-hand side, you're seeing PSK Reporter. And then down below that, I have a little notepad so the remote operators can type messages back and forth between each other.
Oh, okay then.
So that's AnyDesk. So if you pick up another video there, pick up maybe the one that's 4 hours long there, the VA3XT. Yeah. So there's the remote interface there. You see it?
Yep.
Right up in the top left-hand corner. That's the GUI that you're looking at there. So those are all the buttons that are available for the operators. The test button's a nice feature because it disables the transmit, so you can talk between yourselves and it doesn't go on the air. So it's just like having an intercom system.
So it's now you said earlier, and I want to make sure I heard you properly. You have to be present while this is going on because you don't know. Is that typically the case, Rob? You want to be sitting there while somebody else is using it because you are essentially hosting this for other people as opposed to using it yourself.
Yeah. So if you don't have a advanced Canadian advanced qualification, then I have to be physically present. Or present and in control. So if I'm not sitting in the shack, let's say I'm out operating portable and I've got guests that are joining me, I still have full control of the station because as the administrator, I can disable any one of those buttons automatically. Like if somebody pushes the TX button, I can push it and cut it off. I also have a remote shut off that's for power that's not through the remote hams software. I use Wi-Fi enabled receptacle blocks, so I can turn the power on and off to the station. And So I still have full control of the station, even though I'm not actually sitting in the station.
And so, again, just following, the reason you are helping these international hams get their Canadian license is because they need that to be able to do to operate remotely. Is that correct?
No, they don't need a license. They don't need a call sign to operate with me, but they need to have advanced qualifications if they want to operate on their own without me in the station. So
Right.
the young man that I talked about, Jules,
Mhm.
F4 IEY, he holds VA3 IEY. He holds an American call sign as well too. So, but he has advanced qualifications. So I'm able to let him operate on his own, and he's capable of doing that. There's lots of controls that are built into remote hams that, I can limit like operating frequencies. Because I'm a CFARS operator, my radio's opened up for broadband transmit outside the amateur bands, but I limit what's available for other operators to stay within the amateur band, so that they can't transmit outside the amateur band.
Yeah. Absolutely. If anybody watching this has questions for Rob, please pop them in the chat. I'm watching that chat just to make sure that we can pass those along, because it's kind of complex, isn't it, Rob? How long did it take you to get your head around all this?
I started about 4 years ago, I guess, and I operated on my own, and I spent a lot of time interfacing with ISCD, to be quite honest. I became, pretty well connected with one of the inspectors, because I sent out a query to them. There was a lot of ambiguities around remote operation in Canada, and everybody had their own opinion, and the regulations, and they're not really regulations, but the policy around remote operation in Canada is contained within it's the document's called RIC3, and it has no status in law, but it's an operating procedure for amateurs. So we all follow it. But there was a lot of ambiguities about how and who could operate, and so on and so forth. So I spent a great deal of time talking to ISCD and making sure that, before I kind of got deep into this, that, I understood what I could do and what I couldn't do. And that's where, the participation and communication comes about. It's like if you're out with the Boy Scouts or Girl Guides on for a jamboree on the air, you let them come in, you hand them the mic, and they talk. It's the same sort of thing. It's just using a virtual mic cord instead of having them sitting there and handling using the hand mic.
Sorry, for the record, what is IECD?
ISCD, Innovation, Science, and Economic Development. That's the regulators for amateur radio in Canada.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And I see Potobeg asking about how difficult it is. I'm an accredited examiner. There are practice tests available online. Certainly, please send me an email if anybody's interested in getting their qualifications. I can do virtual exams. They are actually going to be making that permanent. That we can do virtual exams, and we can do them for any areas within Canada. You have to have an address in Canada, whether it's a friend or a relative or whatever. You have to have an address in Canada for ISCD to send the documents to. And so there's 2 levels of qualification, actually 3 levels of qualification in Canada. The basic test is 100 questions. If you take it and you get less than 80%, then you get basic qualifications, which means that you can't operate HF. You're limited to VHF, UHF. If you get a CW endorsement, you can operate CW you can operate CW and phone in the HF portions. Or if you get 80% or higher, you get basic with honors. So that gives you full HF privileges, except with some limitations. You're limited to the amount of power you can run, You can't hold a club call sign, and so on and so forth. So then the next level is advanced, and that's a 50-question test, and it's quite a bit harder. There's a lot of theory involved in it. I've been told that it's harder than the U.S. extra exam. I don't know. It's a long time since I've taken it, but I've never taken the U.S. one, so I don't really know. But I do know some people that have done both. So that's how you can get qualified in Canada.
Thank you. Here's a question from James KC8OPV. Does remote hams require port forwarding with your network router, or do you use something like Tailscale to reach the network? And that's all gibberish to me.
Yes. You have to have an internet connection that allows port forwarding. Most over-the-air, like cellular network internet connections, do not allow that. There are ways of getting around that. You can use a tunnel or a VPN or whatever. I have a high-speed DSL line here, so I have no issues at all. I think that some of the over-the-air internet providers are starting to open that up, but the reason they don't do that is that they don't want people running an internet server on their cell phone networks.
Fair enough. Okay, good stuff. Hey, if you got any other questions about remote operation, throw them in the chat. Hey, Tim, what are you thinking about all this stuff?
I can't wait to try it. Sounds like fun.
Well,
many years ago, you could buy time on somebody would have a tower, and they'd have like a 40-meter beam, rotatable beam on the tower, and you could buy time and do a remote operation for it. And I went so far as to get like a price quote for it, and they wanted like $200 for a half hour or something like that. It was crazy. And I was just like, oh, it's a great idea, but no, so that's where I left it from there.
There is currently a service that does that. It's called Remote Ham Radio. They're a pay-per-use service. They have stations in many different countries, none in Canada because of our regulations, but certainly a lot in the U.S. And so you pay a service to use their stations. There's exception to that is they let youth operators 25 and under use it for free. So some of the YLs in our group, like Marzika from Turkey and several others have been using remote ham radio for quite some time. And she's operated as 9 Alpha Tango Lima 7 Yankee Lima Yankee. You may have worked her on the air, I'm not sure.
So if I use like a TikTok youth filter or something, I could do that?
To find them, you mean? Or
25 and under.
Well, I guess I
could pass in real life, but
sure. Well, the pocket protector helps a lot. Makes you look younger.
My Hello Kitty pocket protector, maybe. But.
Exactly, yeah.
So Rob, is the access to this, is it a web-based thing?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's you install a Remote Hams client on your computer.
Right.
So I have the server on my computer, which is connected to the radio. You need the Remote Hams client to access the server. There are many online, like on the Remote Hams system. Some are open, and you don't have to get permission to operate on them. But the vast majority, you have to contact the owner and have them grant you access to transmit.
Right.
Now, almost all of them you can log into them and listen, but you can't change frequency. You can't change anything on the radio. So there's the different levels of access are you can do that. The next level is club level. So with a club level, you can tune the remote so you can change the frequencies and the modes and that sort of stuff. You just can't transmit. The next level beyond that is given granted access to transmit. So then you would see. So when you log in, you come up on the screen. Your username comes up on the screen. And so if there's nothing beside your name, then you don't have any access at all to use it. Just listen. If there's a C comes up, means you're a club member. If you're an X comes up, means that you have permission to transmit. If you have an A, then you're administrator, and that's what I'm set up as an administrator with all my logins, and I won't grant administration to anybody else that I'm aware of, or I don't need to, because that gives them full use of all the controls. So that's the way it's set up. And so Pota Bay was asking about how you get an address in Canada. Well, you have to make friends with somebody, I guess. And I have allowed some to use my address because they're club members, but I don't want to do that for a lot of people because it, kind of makes things a bit complicated.
Understand that completely. Well, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that with us. Sorry, go ahead. Who's saying something?
I was just saying it's pretty cool stuff. I had a chuckle earlier on when you were saying about the old days with using a phone patch. There was a friend of mine that we were at a ham fest. We were both in high school, and he got a phone patch he hooked up to his rig. And so here I am sitting in my house, and I called him, and he goes, "Hang on," and he sets it all up, and I was actually had a QSO sitting on a telephone, using it used Vox to trigger the transmit. And it was pretty cool. That was like a million years ago. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, and phone patches at one time are very, very controversial because they were seen as taking revenue away from the phone companies.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of
long distance calls. That's right.
Exactly. They didn't want to see that happen. And then ILRP was another one. Internet Radio Linking Protocol was another one that came up with it. So there's always going to be somebody that's not going to be happy with something, right? So
of course,
people don't like change. I mean, there's some people that think if it doesn't have tubes, it's not real ham radio. So
that's right.
Doggone it.
And it
if
should be,
if you use it on a microphone, it's not real ham radio either.
It should be AM only, right? So
yeah, that and CW.
AM and CW, and 10 words a minute CW.
That's right.
Or 50. Nothing in between. 10 or 50.
Everything else is bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. So
don't you agree?
Here he goes again. Second time tonight, Tim, the quarter jar.
Yeah, and no, you can't just use a PO box. It's got to be a physical address. So shoot me an email. You've got my email address there, and we'll see what we can work out for you and Glenn. I think your partner's name is.
Good stuff. Okay, here's an interesting one. How much is network latency an issue?
As long as you have a good internet connection, it's not an issue. Mine's typically about anywhere from 0.08 up to 0.16 milliseconds.
Oh, that's not
that's locally here. Now, that doesn't mean that's what the person on the other end gets because it's dependent on their internet connection. So
that was my question too, because when I was looking at the remote operating thing, just for fun, I was like, well, and that was 2014, 2015. So the internet was kind of fast then, but the lag time on such a thing would be interesting. But
yeah, it's not really very noticeable. When you do notice is contesting, and because you in contests you got speed talkers, right? So they only leave about a half a second between when they're done calling CQ and when they start calling CQ again. So typically, what I've found works when I'm contesting, I start calling before they're done talking. And then it kind of that eats up any latency, so they actually hear me instead of hearing me after they're starting to call again.
Yeah, makes sense.
Absolutely. Hey, Philip, KA4KOE, nice to have you on board with us tonight, Philip. Disappointed with linking remote control on his Flex 6300. Says it never worked well. And almost have to be a network engineer to wade through it. And
I didn't find remote hams too bad, actually. The biggest thing is to get the right cable to connect your radio. So the TS870 uses a USB to RS-232 connection. It has to be an FTDI chipset, so it has to be the correct chipset to work. And you install the correct drivers and so forth. It really wasn't an issue. And I know the ICOM radios put both the CAT control and audio through the same USB cable. The Kenwood does not do that, at least on the 850. Maybe the newer ones do, or the 870. Maybe the newer ones do. But I just use direct audio cable connections from the computer to the transceiver. So from the audio out on the computer to the mic on the radio, and from the headphone on the radio to the mic in on the computer, and then you just adjust your levels. I made my own cables with using blocking capacitors and basically an RC network on each cable to impedance match and block any voltages that may be on the microphone connector, because some of them have phantom power on them for the electret cartridges.
Okay, good stuff. Hey, Mike, thank you very much, Mike. Just making sure Tim hasn't demonetized you. Yeah, before he starts swearing some more. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, Mike. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
So how are you gonna split $5 4 ways?
You know what? And now I'm out of excuses because the post office is working here in Canada.
Well, not only that, but you got exchange rates to consider too.
Yeah, you don't want to do the exchange right now, Tracy.
Yeah, you're going to get about 7 cents.
No. That transaction was date stamped. Right.
Absolutely. Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit here. Thanks for talking to us about this. But Rob, you have some involvement in this other thing, which I find absolutely fascinating. And I'm hoping you'll share this with our group here. Noble Skywave. What is Noble Skywave?
I'm glad you asked. Noble Skywave is an international HF championship that is organized by the Canadian Forces Electronic Branch. It's a military-only operation. I was invited as a mentor for Canadian Forces Signal Ops, and we were set up at the Armory in Guelph, Ontario. And the reason I was invited was I was a participant in another military exercise last May, which was called Exercise Trillium Venture. So they had 800. It was a training exercise simulating a heat event, 13-day long heat event. They had 800 troops that ascended upon Bruce and here in Bruce and Grey counties, which is where I live. And so they had amateur operators from different locations come out and set up at different sites. So I was stationed at Godrich, and I had two CFARS operators with me, their hams as well. And so there was I think 8 different sites where they had amateurs stationed, and we were kind of the communications link between all the deployed troops in the area. So that went quite well, and we did pretty well. So they invited me to attend Noble Skywave as a mentor. So and that was in mid-October. Before I went down there, I applied for and got my CFARS qualifications. CFARS is you have to be an amateur radio operator, but it's a military qualification, and we have to go through. We have to take testing and so forth for ICS 100 and ICS 200, which is incident command system, and also we had to take a test for secrets and so forth. So because I had my CFARS qualifications, I was able to also to operate. So the picture you're seeing there now, those are a couple of Canadian Forces signal ops, and that's my radio set up in my trailer. So you see that the radio they're using is a Kenwood TS850, and we were running barefoot. It was all military frequencies, so it was outside the amateur bands. And I have that radio opened up as well. But one of the things that make it work really well was that we had a lot of noise level because we were in the downtown of Guelph, Ontario. I used my remote station as a receiver, so we were able to copy stations that we wouldn't have heard on site at Guelph through my remote station. So our furthest contact was in Kyrgyzstan. It was a U.S. station, and it was 10,135 kilometers, I believe. It's in the Middle East, and that was on frequencies that were just, I think, above the That's not that's for VA3YLR, but that's we were just above 20 meters, I believe. So I used a quarter wave resonant vertical attached to my trailer. So you see the pole at the back there is about 24, 25 feet high, and I have I have an antenna connection feed point on the back of the trailer at the roof line. Yeah, so you'll see there's an 80, 40, 20 link dipole at the top of the pole, and then there's you'll see a couple of vertical elements running from the back of the trailer up to the top of the pole. One was for the 14 megacycle band, the other one was for 18 megacycle. And then at the front of the trailer, there's a little pair or a log periodic antenna there. That's my cell phone repeater. So when you're out using a remote station, and I use my cell phone for a hotspot, then I got a cell phone repeater which helps to improve the cell phone connectivity. So that's what we did there. So the exercise was a 40-hour operation, and we ended up what did we get here? So there's I think 360 different military sites that were operating in it, and we had 7 stations set up at Guelph. Some of them had much more than that. We worked Dutch military that were stationed in South Africa in the jungle, and we worked a number of stations over in Europe and so forth. So there's different segments to Noble Skywave. So there was a free play. So basically you could use whatever mode you want. Some of them were using military digital modes, and I was going to try FT8, but I never got around to it.
Who's the one guy in Siberia?
Yep. I think that's probably a U.S. station. I can't. What does it say there?
It's Carmax 1CRPG CA397.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that was. Charlie Alpha is a Canadian station, but I don't think that's a Canadian one. But anyway, so we came in 75th overall. We were 21st in the SSB teams. So we did pretty well. And one thing that the other operators found out very quickly was that their half-wave end-fed antennas that were cut for amateur bands did not work well on the military frequencies.
Interesting.
Well,
again slower. What?
Well, half-wave end-feds depend on harmonics, right? So
sure.
So if it's cut to say 80 meters, 3.7 megahertz, say, and you're wanting to operate up into the 5 megahertz band, or wherever you're wanting to operate, it's not going to load well. Yeah. So the approach that I took was I had rolls of wire with me, and I cut quarter wave elements to the frequencies we were going to operate on.
Yep.
And then use the tuner on my rig to touch them up. We were only running 100 watts. So, well, actually, the 850 runs about 120 watts output, but we weren't running any amplifiers.
Well, that's 80 more watts than you need.
Yeah, exactly. Especially for 10,000 kilometers, right?
Sure.
So
man.
So that was Noble Skywave, and then coming up in April, end of April in 2025, there's going to be another Trillium venture, and it's going to be down near Belleville. So I've been invited to participate in that as well. They want me to be at the HQ for that. So I haven't got all the details in that yet, but that'll be a nice bit of operating for us, and a bit of a drive too.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, listen, I just want to interrupt for a sec here. Rich has stepped up. Hey, Rich, from N4VS. Thanks very much, Rich. So now I got to figure out how I'm going to square up with these guys. You're making my life a little bit harder. And here we go with Philip. He's just adding to the mayhem here. Thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
He's just going to spend it on antennas. Don't listen to him.
And had a question there about the U.S. Army. Yes, the U.S. Army had many stations involved.
Okay. So this is a global event, is it? Or is it NATO? Who all takes part in it?
It's a global event. There was NATO countries and non-NATO countries, I think.
Okay.
But it's organized by the Canadian Forces.
Okay.
And The station I worked in, Kyrgyzstan, was actually a U.S. station.
Cool.
Interesting stuff, man. It's, we get so focused on what we do, right? We forget that there's a whole spectrum of stuff outside of the ham radio world, and there's still stuff going on out there.
Yeah, it's great stuff. That's a cool exercise and thing to be a part of, and you get to take your ham radio skills and use them there. So
yeah, absolutely. So I had 3 signal ops that worked with us, and they did very, very well. And of course, the on-air lingo is much different than it is in amateur radio.
I'll bet.
You're not calling CQ. You're saying, radio check, any stations, over. That's how you call CQ.
Right.
And then there's no numerical signal reports. It's weak readable or loud and clear, or weak unreadable. So there's a lot of different nomenclature. And the same with CFARs. I mean, CFARs is military as well. CFARs actually originally was put together because of phone patches. So phone patches originally were done for the military within the amateur bands, but there was so much difficulty created with intentional interference. That's when they put CFARs together and moved off of the amateur bands to do phone patches for deployed military. So that's how CFARs came about. Now it's kind of expanded now, and we do get called out to do practice exercises, and we have a net every Sunday evening. They're using military data transmissions to send messages back and forth. So it's similar but different to ham radio.
One of the things that struck me as I was looking at the photo of your trailer, Rob, is that I just have this impression that the military guys have it already figured out. They have all the radio stuff figured out. And yet you're describing, a station and antennas, which are basically ham oriented. I'm not seeing, I didn't see the military radio sitting there. I didn't see an antenna that is that looks like it's a military antenna. Is that by design? Can you I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
What clearance level do you have, Tracy?
Sorry?
What clearance level do you
not
have?
that clearance level. If you have to kill me, don't tell me.
Sorry.
I can't share our secret handshake. I'm sorry. Yes, the military has all their own radios. They have all their own antennas. But you got to understand, their equipment is built so they can throw it in the back of a troop carrier and drive into the desert and deploy it quickly. And they're just they're far more robust than what we would ever use as amateurs. But they're limited. The radios actually work quite well. I mean, they have radios that will do 400 watts with an amplifier. They've got some stations that do 10,000 watts. I think the one in one of the HQ radios in Kingston was 10,000 watts. They use a lot of NVIS antennas. So there's one that they use. I think if you look up B&W antennas, so basically, it's in the Noble Skywave album. I don't think I put it in the album for the live stream there, Tracy. But in the Noble Skywave album, there is a picture of them up on the top of the roof of the armory. So it's a center pole that's probably 25 feet high, and there's like 4 wires that are coming off the top, and it's got a great big, ballon and so forth down at the bottom. So that's an NVIS multiband antenna that they use. And a lot of their radios are crystal controlled, I think, as somebody put there, and they're channelized. They're not variable frequencies like we are. They're channelized. So again, they're meant for deployment in rugged terrains and different environments that that we would not typically be involved with as amateurs. So, but they're also not as well versed in HF operation as amateurs are either. So that was one of the reasons they wanted me there as a mentor, so that I could teach them. I mean, I demonstrated FT8 to them, how that worked, and I showed them how we build antennas, and why I did the type of antenna that I did, and so forth. So I did actually invite the signal ops that were there with us to participate in the event we did on the weekend, but they weren't unable to join us, which is unfortunate. But I think they would have enjoyed it. But so yeah, it's the same but different.
Very interesting. Well, that is a cool experience. I'm just going to run down a couple of comments here. CFARS requires a lot of care. Oh, CFARS stands for what, Rob?
Canadian Forces Affiliate Radio Service.
Thank you very much.
And it's CFARS with a C.
Yeah, absolutely. Poda Babes, it's signing out. Thanks for joining us, Terry. Really appreciate it. Chris KF6 NFW, good evening to you, sir. What do we got here? And LWA Appleby, thank you. And Richie. All right. Well, there we have it, guys. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Earlier on in the live stream, there was a Victor Echo 8 in the chat too. I'm not wondering if that person is still here, because Chris was saying that he didn't have a lot of contacts in Canada. So
only on 10 meters. I never logged.
Hey, scans don't count. Okay.
So 10 meters. So some of the call sign areas that you would really want to look for. Victor Echo 8, of course, is Yukon.
Right. It's like Yellowknife somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah. VY0 is Nunavut. That includes Ellesmere Island. VY0 ERC is a Eureka Radio Club. It's at Eureka, which is on Ellesmere Island in the far north, not too far from Alert. And they are not on the air very often, but that's a call sign you want to get in your log for sure. I've got them. I actually worked them on 40 meter from my mobile a few years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah. So working stations in the high Arctic is a huge challenge. It's not it's not like trying to work down to the south, because the propagation up towards the North Pole becomes a big issue.
If you take a look at the maximum usable frequency map, it becomes very apparent that the farther you go north, the more difficult it is.
You work the equator where the sun is at its peak, right? So, yeah.
And yes, the DoD is putting a lot more emphasis on HF. A lot of the operational people are wanting to get HF used more frequently. It got sort of taken out of the toolbox for many different reasons, but a lot of the operational people are trying to get it back in use much more again. That's why they're involving more amateurs in the operations.
And that is, because you mentioned it, Rob. For many years, they really seem to be stepping away from it. The amateur bands back, if you think back to the 60s and the 70s and even into the 80s a little bit, the HF bands were under attack. And then that pressure abated, as with satellites and all the rest of it. But if anybody out there is watching this, it's always a good idea, regardless of what you think about politics, to join your national amateur radio organization to defend the space that we have in the HF spectrum, or even in the VHF UHF spectrum. That's a primary function of those organizations. So up here in Canada, I'm a member of the Radio Amateurs of Canada. I would say that given what Rob's telling us here, an increased emphasis on HF means that are those bands of ours, which look, if somebody looks in at 15 meters on a given day when the sunspot cycle isn't high and says, hey, we want that 400 kilohertz of spectrum, then it can be tough to defend. We have to have the right people to do that. So I'm going to get off my soapbox about that one.
All right, well, I would add to that look at a band like 220 here in the States, right? And I get 1.25 whatever centimeters, right? So it's like, if you don't use it, they're going to take it away. Now there's repeaters there, but and there are a handful of radios out there, but if you don't get on there and just check in. Don't just ka-chunk it. Just check in. You never know. You might get a QSO going. Use the freaking frequencies we have.
Yeah.
That's my soapbox.
I actually don't. I don't think we're at risk of the military trying to take our bands away. They have a lot of their own. I mean, they've got many frequencies, right from 2 megahertz up to 30 megahertz. They got lots of band space. I think what you're going to see at risk is for commercial use.
Yeah.
That's where you're gonna see more of our bands trying to get scooped up for commercial use, where they can make money off of it.
That's right.
Not for military use.
That's right.
But yes, and I think Electromagnetic Mischief commented about a lot of it was moving towards satellite. And yes, satellite is I have my own opinions about satellite and Starlink and stuff like that. But they have their place. But when all else fails, I mean, satellites are not immune from a lot of different things. It's hard to beat a twisted pair coming into your house for internet connection.
You got that right.
I think a lot of people are finding that out now. I know that one of the fellows that runs a group on 40 meters in the morning, WB2REM, runs the 7163 group from his station in Florida, and he's got a remote. And a lot of us go on the remote and talk because of skip zones and that sort of thing. But he's having a lot of difficulties trying to get an over-the-air service that works for him reliably, and he's just having a lot of difficulties with that. So, again, I think that over-the-air internet and cell phones have become popular because they're easy. Doesn't mean that they're the best.
Wise words, absolutely. Wall Street wants our frequencies for data traffic, Rich says. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. Tim, what do you now, Tim, with your mindset, what is your thinking about this?
The ARL takes care of all that.
Oh, sorry. Did I laugh about the ARRL? I'm sorry.
What are they doing with my $30 then?
Yeah, just think of Logbook of the World and that server hack that
what
they got.
am I paying these guys for, huh?
Yeah, and they don't even send you a print copy anymore.
I think there's a international treaty thing associated with that too, isn't there? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to come and take our ham bands, but I don't think the ham bands are going to expand much further.
Right.
Check this out. Here's an interesting comment from KF6NFW. I work in disasters and hear it from some in the industry that they wish amateur radio would go away. Boy, I'd like to get more detail on that one, Chris, if you've got some.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm sure we're a pain in their neck.
Why? Because
we can't be
for the
controlled.
most part, we stick to our little slivers, right?
Well, no, I mean, you hop on 75 meters any given weekend, and
well, why would you do that if you have no business being on there? Right?
And speaking of the ARRL and QST,
nobody likes hams, dude. Come on.
Speaking of the ARRL, I'm going to put a little plug in here for those that get the QST magazine. Keep an eye out for the February edition. I'm having a story published about our Marconi operation last year, on December the 12th, when we had Raisa from St. Petersburg, Ava from Switzerland, and Callum, the DX commander from the UK, operate with us. And I wrote a story. It was published in a lot of different magazines in different countries around the world, thanks to
that's right. I read this one. Yeah.
Connections.
Yep.
But QST is going to publish it in their February edition coming up. So
good.
Kind of happy about that.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Rob. That's outstanding. Hey, Wade, VA3NCA, thanks for dropping by. Appreciate your support tonight. What's Chris got to say? Because amateurs are the problem. We aren't controllable.
Right,
and ARES isn't a national program with standard rules. Okay. I guess.
I think, it's funny. We've talked about this before on here. It's a lot of that has to do with guys that fall into the category of sad hams, and they're just jerks.
Well,
and how do you help people? And you can see why some first responders and disaster crews and stuff like that, like they don't want to deal with hams.
Oh, yeah.
Well, okay, but why are hams there? Sorry, and this is a serious question, right? There are certainly people who have too much time on their hands,
right?
And they get into other
nature, okay? Because if you get one person in a disaster area who acts like an ass, you get, oh, it's those hams again, not Billy Joe or whoever, So you get people get grouped like that.
I think we talked about it too, like right after the hurricanes went through Florida, right?
Yeah.
There's a net, actually a whole system of network of repeaters down there that's designed by hams. It's on ham frequencies to provide emergency communications during a hurricane, right? Well, guess what? This year they had all sorts of malicious interference on it, that just basically made the thing, useless.
Which is back to the sad hams.
Yeah, that's a disgrace.
Well, okay, but so hey, I'm not disputing any of that, guys. All I'm saying is that either amateur radio can provide a service or we can't, right? And if we can't, so be it. We lost that ability to do that. But we also know that there is this tiny fraction of hams in our hobby that are those guys,
right?
Yes.
And everybody else, we've got a lot of good community spirited people
for sure
in our ranks, and
they
are
a lot of service,
the crazies.
A lot of service does get provided, but it's 80-20 everywhere, all the time.
That's right.
In everything.
That's right.
Yeah, that's just humans.
So just to switch gears here again, just a little bit for me. So January 8th is the 53rd anniversary of OnTARS. I don't know whether you know that or not, Tracy, but I will be live streaming the entire day on my channel.
Nice.
I did that last year as well. So because I have some pretty good ears on my station, there's not too many people that I can't hear. So it was really appreciated last year when I did that. So I'll be doing that again this year. So it'll be on from 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. And then I go into the description after it's all done, and then I'll put in time tags for the start of everyone's half hour. So just for Tim and Chris and anyone else that's watching, OnTARS is a 80-meter daily net that runs from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. with different controllers every hour. But on the anniversary, they have a different controller every half hour, and so it's a pretty active day, and there's lots of people checking in and so forth. So it's a pretty good celebration, and OnTARS is kind of a staple here in Ontario on 80 meters.
Did you say 80 meters during the day?
Yep, 37.55.
Okay.
Yeah, it's challenging in the summertime, but this time of year it's pretty good.
Hey, Rich, a happier note. Santa brought him a new Yaesu FTM 500. Awesome.
Nice.
How fantastic is that? Let us know how you like it, Rich. It's I'm curious because I was looking at one of those, listening to John Kruk of Yaesu talk last week, and I'm thinking, it's kind of an interesting rig. Have you guys, Rob, did you pay any attention? Are you on VHF, UHF, like 2 meter 440 at all?
I do have a VHF, UHF remote, and I use a Kenwood TMD 700 for that.
Yeah, he's a Kenwood
okay.
Guy.
There's a solid rig.
If you haven't caught that thread, he's a Kenwood guy.
Yeah, I might be a Kenwood guy. I'm looking at my Kenwood TS520 there over on the other shelf, and my 850 sitting here, and I've got a Kenwood handheld up in the corner. Yeah, I do have a couple of Yaesu handhelds though.
Yeah, you can't beat a Kenwood's reputation for sure. What do you think, Rob? What's your thoughts on Kenwood in the amateur market? They certainly aren't cranking out radios the way they used to. What's your take on where they're at?
Well, Kenwood makes premium radios. I don't think there's any getting around that. The TS590 SG is an excellent radio. It's a little bit higher price than the 7300, but it's a far superior radio. I'm not sure. Do you know Ronnie V3 NLS?
I do.
You do, or
Innovative Circuits?
Yeah, Innovative Circuits. So I've had several discussions with him, and I'm sure there's probably ICOM guys on here that aren't going to like what I'm going to say here. But
sorry, can I just preface this?
Yep.
Ronnie is probably the best known ham radio tech in Ontario. If you've got a problem with one of your rigs, you ship it off to Ronnie, who's just outside of Barrie, Ontario. He'll take a look at it. He knows what he's doing, and he'll get it back to you in good shape. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we're making that clear, Rob.
No, I appreciate that, and I agree with that 100%. So, probably the number one radio he gets in for repair is the ICOM 7300. Not only because it's a very popular radio, but it's built with components that are very they're not robust. So, and one of the biggest problems is the front end of the 7300 is very susceptible to static, close by lightning strikes, high signal levels. And the problem is that they've miniaturized everything so much on the boards, you can't repair them. You physically are not able to go in and replace the blown components. You have to replace the whole board, and the board is $800. And Ronnie's having trouble even getting them now because ICOM is I guess not. He's having to repair so many that they're not cutting them off completely, but they're making it challenging for him to get components. So ICOM followed by Yaesu and the Kenwood is the least repaired radio that he sees come in. Now, Kenwood is maybe not as popular as some of the other ones, but for example, the 850 that they have, and the 870 share the same final transistors. Those are can easily put out 150 watts, 100% duty cycle.
Mm-hmm.
But they send them out with 100 watt output, so they're very, very robust, and the switching circuits in them. So an ICOM 7300, you can't switch a tube type amplifier. You have to have a secondary relay in line because the switching inside the radio won't take the voltage from the tube type amplifier because it's electronic switching, whereas Kenwood still, I don't know, I'm not sure about the 590 and the 990, but the older ones at least were all still relays, so you don't have any trouble at all with switching amplifiers on those. So there's a lot of different things that he was telling me. I'm just I'm summarizing it. It's kind of a thumbnail sketch, but that's been his experience anyway.
Yep. Well, you love to hear what the technicians are saying, the guys who have been neck deep in all of them, to give you their feedback. I take their word all the time. All right, what else we got here? Okay,
we got there's a little bit of makings of a fight here, I think.
I don't know. I think people are being pretty well behaved.
Rob dropped a turd on our desk here. Love it.
I did preface it in saying that some people may not like what I got to say.
Well, you did. You know what? And it's fair, right?
All I know is my Baofeng works perfectly.
Look here.
It transmits on 100 bands at once.
That's right. I have no trouble getting out. Try that tube amp too. Let me tell you.
I was on that the Coffee and Ham Radio stream a few weeks back, and the guys were making cracks about the Baofengs, right? The one guy says, "Well, it just happens to work on 220, one of the handhelds," and the other guy cracked back and said, "Well, it just happens to work on 2 meters too." It's that kind of a rig.
Yeah, but you know what?
We're going from talking Kenwood to Baofeng.
It was $20. Okay.
And it's worth every penny.
Absolutely is. Without question.
Okay.
Hell, you might raise enough money on the stream to get you one.
I've got a General Electric Master Pro in the garage that just happens to do 2 meters too. Once it was converted, that's one of the old trunk mount 2 meter VHF commercial rigs.
It's going to run forever, that radio. I mean, just
look
to your standard. You just don't see it.
There's a smart guy in the chat. It says, I never hear about the TS590SG. Reminds me of the old 450D Yaesu, which yours truly still runs. Right? I'd love to try one out. Go to Yankee Electronics of Green Bay, Wisconsin, and in their vintage store, you can find yourself a TS590 SG, and multiple other vintage Yaesu or Kenwood rigs, which I highly recommend.
Here we go.
I
always loved my Kenwood. Steven,
Yeah.
my last radio, I fell into the IC 7300 hype. Now I wish I still had any of my old Kenwoods. You know what? I'm probably going to take some ire for this one, but I never wanted a 7300. And the reason is it has to do more with my psychology and the way I work than anybody else. Everybody, I can't tune up and down the HF bands and hear somebody say what they've got without at least one of the guys running a 7300. It's like, I don't want to run a radio everybody else is running.
Well, I'm not a big fan of waterfall displays. I like having it on FT8, but for a radio, I've never had one with a display, so I don't really. I'm not going to go run out and buy one just to get a display.
The fish finder, yeah, I agree with you. I have as much fun running my SG 2020 old school as I do the IC 705. Right? It's at the end of the day, I'm making contacts.
That's
so
right.
I'm with you on that, Rob.
The person on the other end can't hear your display.
You know, in all honesty, it's the antenna that makes the difference anyway. So,
well, sounds like an antenna guy talking there.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, you can have all the power and the technology you want, but if you're connected to a wet noodle, that's what you get.
That's right.
Okay, here we go.
I knew it. All right.
And to MAK to
Please.
fix the ICOM 7300, it costs $800 for new board, but to fix a Yaesu, it costs $1,000 to buy an ICOM.
Oh man! Wow.
Shots fired.
Now this is ham tubing. Okay.
Yeah,
My radio's
we're getting
great.
there.
Your radio sucks. Like that. That's what it's all about.
Okay, we better. On a note like that, we might want to put a bow on this one, guys. Okay, good stuff. We got to keep things in the holiday spirit after all, right? And there you go.
Yeah,
We
there
got the Uncle Eddie hat.
Oh, shitter's full.
There he goes again. Tim, another quarter for the jar.
They don't
No, I just-
demonetize you for
I just
that.
need my cigar.
That's right. And when they gotta go like over here, nothing.
Absolutely. And Mike, the 710 is a great radio, and I can't wait for an 857 replacement. Look at this. I still have my 957. I think he means 857, and it'll run till it dies. And Tracy won't get within 10 meters of a G90. Yes, sir. You're absolutely right. Okay, let's do this. Thank you very much, Rob.
Elitism.
Rob, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I said yes to Tracy and your elitism. Hey, before we go, all right, I have a question. This is because this happened to me. Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, I only run." This is the only time this has ever happened. Somebody's asking for end connectors for one of the antennas, and I was like, "Wow, nobody's ever asked me for an end connector ever." Does anybody run end connectors on HF stuff?
Not
No.
that I've ever seen.
Why?
That's pretty much VHF, UHF.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
why?
VHF. I thought, at least my old Diamond and all that stuff was end connectors. But I was like, oh. And I was like, this is one of my busy days. It's like right in the peak of the, running around. I'm like, yeah, get an adapter. So that was just like, that had never happened to me. Just thought I'd ask.
There's it's all about loss at UHF, right? And there's no loss at HF, so that doesn't make sense.
Well, the connectors I think are supposed to be waterproof too. Isn't their advantage? They're water resistant or something like that.
Well, if you're putting a connector outdoors, aren't you going to put
You know,
something
wrap
on
it.
it?
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
gonna wrap. Yeah, that's okay. No,
Unless
it's cool.
you're doing a portable operation.
I wrap my stuff. If there's any threat of rain
yeah.
in portable, Rob,
Yeah.
I do wrap mine.
Yeah. A little bit of silicone will come right off if you
Yeah.
get it in time.
Yeah.
I use
Well,
I generally like to use copper NECs on my connectors when I put them together,
yeah, that makes sense.
and you
Absolutely.
just don't want to get the bridge of goop between the center and the outside though.
Yeah, no, and stuff like coax seal. Oh my gosh, that stuff is the devil's instrument. Try getting that stuff off when it gets into the threads. Oh man,
I bought a tube. When I first got licensed, I bought a tube of that dielectric foam or whatever it was that they were pitching it, and I was, I'm a new ham. I'm buying everything, right? I need this. I need the colored coax wrap and the dielectric foam for the connectors and all that stuff. And I was digging through my drawer. You should see my drawers, right? My junk drawers.
I don't want to see your drawers, Tim. Just saying.
You can do that. I go commando, actually. But
whoa, TMI.
TMI.
So, and I looked down, and I had this tube still, and it's still, you squeeze it and the foam comes out. So that it still works, like after 12 years. I don't put anything on mine. What do you guys use?
Electrical tape. Like I do use electrical tape. To Rob's statement, deoxit or Penetrox is also a good thing to use. And there's Diamond makes a coax seal like product, and I think it's just called dielectric tape or something like that. It looks a lot like coax seal, but it's not coax seal, and it comes off beautifully. Seals it right up, but you can use a knife, just peel it after it's been up for a while, and it'll come right off. I've still got some coax here that I had used coax seal on, and I can't use it anymore because it got into the threads, and it's just a mess. All right, listen, guys, let's put a bow on this one. Thank you very much, Rob. Rob, you've given us a lot of information tonight.
Yes.
Are there any thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with before we pull the plug here?
Well, I guess get outdoors and get on the air.
There you go.
Hey, I've heard that somewhere before. But thank you.
Just get on the air. Enjoy your radios.
That's right.
And that's what we're in the hobby for.
That's right.
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't matter if it's Kenwood, Yaesu, ICOM, G90. It really doesn't matter. Have fun. Yeah.
Is on?
That's what we're All right. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next month. And by the way, that N2MAK guy who's been throwing all the wisecracks, he's going to be our guest next month.
Oh, boy.
Nice.
So we're looking forward to having Mike on. Everybody, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. Hope it's a good one. Safe, healthy, happy for everybody and all your families.
Happy Festivus.
For the rest of
Festivus.
7-3.
For the rest of us.
For the
Good
rest.
night.
7-3 all.